Boys, with the year now concluding in the UFC, I wanted to go over our biggest 2024 winners. These are our fighters that heading into the year and now exiting the year had the biggest gains in their stock, let's say, and are now entering 2025 in a situation where they are defending a title, possibly fighting for a title, are climbing up the rankings, might have just entered the rankings. When it comes to my list, I had guys that you had to fight at least twice. So sorry Islam, sorry Bilal, sorry John Jones, Tom Aspinall, all of these guys that might have had big moments and might have had big title fight wins, but the fact that you didn't fight twice, I thought they were ineligible. Secondly, how impressive were your results? How good were you in the octagon? Did you scrape by, or are you now coming out where you had looked pretty impressive? And also, I'd say this is more important than all this. What was the narrative entering the year, and now what is it exiting the year? What were you thought of as maybe just, this is your ceiling, and now you exit the year like, whoa, all right, this is a guy that, could possibly fight the title, defend it multiple times. What is it? So to begin, I wanted to give my honorable mentions. We'll start off first with Fluffy Hernandez. Obviously went 2-0 this year, start off in February with his win over Roman Kopylov and then defeated Michel Pereira. Really become almost this guy that you're scared to face in middleweight right now. Entering the year, he was ranked number 15, exits year 13. That is really an injustice to describe his year, where he has really almost solidified this narrative as a feared opponent among the top 15 of middleweight. Is shown that now when it comes to fighting him, you have to knock him out early, possibly, or choke him out, because he is just this wave of just constant pressure on his opponent. He did it when he was facing Roman Kopylov, had that badass nod when he was trying to, lock the choke in against Kopylov, and then eventually got it in. And then against Michel Pereira, looking back, the fact that he was a minus 135 favorite, just that slightly, just showed that should have been free money, because after the first round, which was a little close, from the second, third, fourth, and obviously fifth onward, he was just dominating Pereira. Is now going to fight early this year or next year in February against Brendan Allen. Really, I think was a massive winner. Is some guy that we are going to see in 2025 be, that scary guy for your middleweight contenders, your, possibly Izzy, Brendan Allen, obviously, Sean Strickland. A lot of these guys are not going to be wanting to see Anthony Hernandez in the opposite corner. Secondly, we have Peter Yan. Peter Yan heading into this year was 1-3 in his last 4 fights. People were getting really worried after he won his title fight against Jose Aldo. He was seen as what Ilia Topuria honestly was seen initially, obviously not to the exponential extreme for Ilia, as Ilia's just been gone on a tear, but Peter Yan entering this year was in like a make or break it, and he obviously did that where he was fighting Song Yadong in the opener for UFC 299. Lost the first round, but then came back, started, pushing and, asserting his own authority, had that beautiful sweeping takedown on Yadong, got the win there. And then back last month against Figueiredo, had a dominant win against him. Really just showed there was levels to this, and showed that, hey, even the fact that he's now 31 and people are acting like the guy's way past his prime, Peter Yan is definitely, I would say, might fight O'Malley next year for a title shot. Maybe might get the title shot. We'll see where it goes after Merab and Umar fight. But Peter Yan was a definitely big honorable mention. And then lastly, I know I said you had to fight twice, but this guy is just going to be our honorable mention. He's not going to count as a top 10. It's Khamzat Chimaev. At the half point of this year, you could probably say Khamzat was one of the biggest losers when his fallout with Robert Whittaker happened back in Abu Dhabi, or actually that was in Saudi Arabia. Whittaker was generous enough to give an opportunity, and Khamzat took advantage of that. He immediately shot the takedown against Whittaker, and then just had Whittaker just tapping for mercy because he just broke his jaw. And definitely his next fight will be a title shot. Khamzat Chimaev, for that reason, is my last honorable mention. But we'll now get to the countdown, starting with number 10. And it's Ian Gary. Ian Gary, yep, I already know. I'm going to hear it. Oh, casual, don't know ball. You have a guy that already has a loss. Let's be honest, this is a different instance where I'm going to give an exception. Starting of the year, Gary was seen as a guy that, he's a cuck. He wussed out of his fight with Luque last year, then came into his fight with Jeff Neal. Kind of, didn't look really impressive there. His entire post-fight press conference with Rogan, he's just getting booed and just getting really just stupid treatment from the fans. Then, but he got a win nonetheless. He then fights at 303 against Michael Venom Page because Colby Covington doesn't want to fight him. And he had a impressive performance from the standpoint of showing he had ground game. Obviously, Page just, pieced him up on the feet, really forced Gary to have to, fight by, winning on the ground. But a win nonetheless. And then he was supposed to fight Joaquin Buckley. Had he won that would have already been, he would probably regardless gotten up the top 10. But the fact that he basically said, you know what, I'll take in the fact that Bilal's out. I'll fight Shavkat on, 3 weeks notice, fight the boogeyman, fight everyone that's so scared to face him. 18-0, 18 finishes, this marauder. And he showed Shavkat's quite beatable to the point now where people are thinking, I might pick Bilal against Shavkat. Well, why are you doing that? You're doing that because Gary looked so impressive against him. And obviously in that 5th round nearly, had the choke. And did he have, that splendid striking offense? No, but he was really able to, slow down Shavkat's press. Shavkat never even had a takedown. I might be wrong about that. Sorry. When you look at it overall, it was clear that from the expectations to reality, Gary did gain his hype, and he now exits 2024. No one's bringing up his wife or his outside of the cage type relations. People are now saying, Gary, with his age, how young he is and how active he is. Mind you, this is a guy that's now fought 3 times back-to-back years. He's a guy that's going to be up there that rankings for a while. Let's see if he fights Leon in March in London. I'd love to see it, but yes, I definitely think Gary was a massive winner to start off the year. Number 9 is Sharbulet Magomedov. Sharbulet will start off, went 3-0 this year. His fights were over Tricoli, Olajaychik, and Armen Petrosian. In all these instances, they were favorable matchups for Magomedov. Not to mention also, they were all in either Saudi Arabia or Abu Dhabi. So he did have that benefit. But I will credit the fact that, including his debut fight, which happened in October of 2023, he's fought 4 times in the span of a year. That does deserve a bit amount of credit. And he's no longer is just this guy, that is the pirate. He has this, hair and, is the eye and is just like this scary looking guy. He has some stuff that can back it up. And for that reason, now he's going to be fighting Michael Venom Page early next year. Definitely a big person that heading into the year was unranked. It seemed like it was going to be a slow process, but with 2 of his wins coming by knockout, including that badass double spinning back fist against Petrosian, he's now entered himself into top 15 territory and is going to be an exciting fighter. I'm not going to go around and say he's title contending worthy, but I definitely think that he's going to be almost a smaller version of Justin Gaethje at middleweight, where you're just going to be like, the Bullet's going to be fighting. I got to see what crazy type of stand-up striking he is going to have. The best by far, I'd say, for any Dagestani not named Islam. So yes, for that reason, he is up at number 9. Number 8 is probably the biggest winner among prospects, and that is Carlos Prates. Carlos Prates has a staggering 4-0 this year. I'm pretty sure no one else can say that this year. They are all 4, KOs. Each one had a different instance where it started off where he just had that piston-like jab right into Trevin Giles' face where he was trying to set up a knee to the body, which leads perfectly into practically the exact opposite against Charles Radke, where he was just loading up that punch that ended up allowing him to land a perfect knee to the body for Radke, and it ended up getting his second win. And then the third one that kind of really got his hype getting to top 15 status against the Leech, where he just had this just beautiful combo. I mean, he was already just dominating the Leech from the second the fight started. He was showing that, I'm in a whole nother world with him, and he ended up just KOing him at 305. And then most recently, to close the year, had that almost, mystery-like punch on Magny's head, where he just all of a sudden collapsed, and it culminated in his, 4th KO of the year. Carlos Prates, even there was discussion when the Bilal fight fell out against Shavkat that the UFC was trying to get him into fighting Shavkat. I mean, that would have fed generations, but the fact that he had a broken foot, the UFC didn't want to rush it. Carlos Prates is going to be here for a long time. I'm not sure yet, what's his ground fighting like. How is he dealing with submissions? How is he when he's in deal down with a takedown artist? But so far, Carlos Prates is a great fighter, a massive winner, going to be the clear, prospect of the year. So a leading contributor to the fight camp of the year, the Fighting Nerds, along with him, Caio Borralho, obviously Mauricio Ruffi and Gene Silva. All of them were massive winners. No one lost. And for that reason, Carlos Prates, a big winner, someone that I'm going to love be watching, a must-watch fighter nowadays. He's at number 8. Number 7 is Magomed Ankalaev. Obviously, one of probably the least liked fighters on this group. I'll make a hard guess for it, but I will say this: when it came to Magomed Ankalaev, won 2-0 this year. Start off in the first main event of the year back in January 13th. He KO'd Johnny Walker, broke Johnny Walker's nose, and at that point he was saying, okay, I'm deserving of, fighting Alex Pereira. Alex Pereira obviously fights 300 against Jamal Hill, then fights 303, where, after the McGregor fight fell out, people were making the case, Ankalaev should fight him. He should be, the next guy that Pereira faces. That did not be the case at 303 or 307, which coincidentally enough, Ankalaev was fighting 2 weeks later, and it was there that he beat Alexander Rakic and is now the undisputed number one prospect, or number one light heavyweight behind Pereira. And why he's such a winner is that at the beginning of the year, people were like, I don't really want to see Ankalaev fight, Pereira for the potential that he might beat him, to now where we've reached a point where Magomed is looked at as, hey, Alex, you better fight him. Otherwise, we're going to have major questions. And, he's sort of gained that aura of like, ooh, he's the bad guy. He's the guy that's, ruin everyone else's dream scenarios of Alex, winning, having another title defense and then moving up to heavyweight to finally fight Aspinall as the undisputed light heavyweight champion. He's that guy now that's, playing the boogeyman, playing as the scary guy that, is going to ruin everyone else's, dream scenarios for Poatan. So for that reason, I'm going to make Magomed Ankalaev number 7. Moving on to number 6, and this is the highest ranked fighter that is not currently holding a belt. Number 6 I'm going to go with was Joaquin Buckley. I actually take that back. Prates went 4-0 this year. Buckley also went 4-0 this year. Not all of them were knockouts, but he had a great year where heading into the year, he was a guy that was still just remembered for his, KO of the year back in 2020. He lost multiple times. He had lost, to Imavov. He had lost to Chris Curtis. He had lost, to Kevin Holland. He was seen as like, this forgotten guy that's just, going to range around the 500 area. Never really, be a serious guy. Kind of be what, Kevin Holland is, just a tad bit lower. And he came in this year and demolished all those labels that he had. It started with in Atlantic City, where he was, filling in for Sean Brady against Vicente Luque. In the second round, he's able to, KO Luque on the ground and really enter into top 15. He then at UFC 300 presser, he asks, Dana, he calls him out. He says, I want another fight. I want to fight in my hometown of St. Louis. He's then given this, we'll say unfavorable matchup against, Rozaboyev, seen as, this Uzbeki fighter that's, going to come in and just, crash the party. He doesn't do that. He withstands that. He has a kind of bad call out of Conor McGregor, which made no sense. But nevertheless, after that, he then fights Stephen Wonderboy Thompson in Utah. And losing the fight, he's able to, dodge Thompson's strikes and then get in and just load all his power and just send Wonderboy to the mat with just a vicious KO of the night at UFC 307, and had a much better call out against Kamaru Usman. It later leads to where he's supposed to fight Gary. Gary, takes the fight against Shmaev. Take the fight against Shavkat, and then he fights Colby Covington, dominates Colby. Colby didn't stand a chance and is now exiting the year 4-0. Called out once more of Kamaru Usman, and he entered this year as an exiting, or not even the top 15, it was unranked. Now is, I believe, tomorrow he will be number 4. This is being made on Monday, so I could see him, now get that status. And hey, he is someone that is really well liked now. He's really gaining audience with these call outs and really, being at the top of welterweight, and the biggest winner of welterweight, I'd say by far, in 2024. And for that reason, he is number 6 for me. Number 5, and for all the remaining fighters, they are going to be champions. Number 5 for me, I'd say, is Alexandre Pantoja. Pantoja entering this year was seen as like, oh, okay, he's just another, flyweight, and he was, able to be the main card, or be the main event for UFC 301 and UFC 310. Obviously, that wasn't the UFC's wishes. They were hoping that it would be Bilal and Shavkat at 310, and and hoping that Pereira would be it for 301. Obviously, he ended up being the main event for both of them in his fight against Urseg at 301. Kind of a made-up fight last minute. He ended up looking solid enough to get the title offensive, but it was most recently, it was his fight against Asakura where, he was able to, miss the flying knee from Asakura, really kind of show him that there's levels to this, that, yeah, guess what, you're a rising champion, I'm a UFC champion, and I am just miles ahead of you. And he began this year as sign of a guy that, he's had all these boring performances. Who's he beaten? Well, I mean, he's beaten everyone at flyweight, and there's no exciting fights. Exits the year where he's now beaten almost everyone at flyweight, and it's, the conversation people have now made of him as the second best flyweight, but people are now talking about him and Demetrius. Like the fact that he called out Demetrius Johnson was such a good idea because it now gets the conversation of, Demetrius fighting, period. It gets even the conversation of him and Demetrius in the same sentence. So Alexander Pantoja was a big winner this year, a guy that I think after that submission win against Asakura is now getting liked, which I'm glad to see. He's a pretty nice guy. He had that great call out at 290 where he called out his deadbeat dad from the sounds of it. And for that reason, Pantoja is at number 5 for me. At number 4, we have Merab. Now, Merab went 2-0 this year and started in UFC 298, where he dominated Henry Cejudo, and then in 306 defeated Sean O'Malley. One thing about Merab that, it's just showing how good he is that he's now, had 4 straight wins against guys with former belt holders. He started off with Jose Aldo, then he dominated Peter Yan, and then this year it started with Henry Cejudo. He picked up a former gold medal Olympian and just carried him across the mat, kind of showed that, when you're facing me, you have to knock me out. That's your only way of beating me, because come, rounds 2 and 3, I am just going to swarm you. He is the machine. And then he had a tough match against Sean O'Malley at 306. Everyone is rooting against him. Everyone wants to see the Sugar Show have that, highlight reel KO in the Sphere. And he had a very weird fight element where, he's like immediately calling out, O'Malley's corner. He kisses him at the end of the first round and nearly, gets, clipped to end the fight in the first round. But he kind of shows, O'Malley had that weakness where he, was weak against takedowns, and he proved exactly that as he was able to just constantly do it. And for that reason, won the title fight. People are entering the year as kind of thinking, Merab is this dangerous guy that, can win the belt, to where now he is that dangerous guy with the belt. So he's a number 4 and could potentially next year, we'll see how he does against Umar. I want to see how many times. I think Merab has the best chance to think of anyone next year to fight 3 times, given the fact that he isn't Muslim, so you won't have to have the, grace period of Ramadan. He could have a chance of winning 3 belts again this year. We'll see how it goes. Number 3 is Dricus du Plessis. Dricus du Plessis began in the year January 2020, the first title fight where he defeated Sean Strickland. Close title fight, really close. Obviously, a split decision. You could have picked that either way, but he really kind of was able to show this style of his that is so, unique, where he just keeps pressing forward like he's this, clumsy old, like he's the Mr. Flintstone, and he just keeps punching and just keeps, marauding his way and just pushing his style forward against Sean. He then in August, goes into Israel Adesanya's backyard in Australia and takes the challenge head on against Izzy, where Izzy was granted a very unjustified title shot where he had just lost to Strickland, but nevertheless is able to withstand Adesanya having a really good performance in a losing effort. He looked really good in that second and even third round. And then obviously eventually he was able to get the submission on Izzy, be the first person ever to submit Adesanya. Also a reason that I would kind of make the case that Dricus had, I'd say, the third best year, in that in his 2 title fights, he was able to make both of his opponents literally cry pre-fight. He did that with Strickland, where Strickland was, obviously crying on the Theo Von podcast about where Dricus was mentioning his father. And then Dricus, when it came to Izzy, he just had boatloads of stuff, whether it was the dog's comment, whether it was like calling him my brother, or, your background is like, you're not really that poor. And he, I don't think I've ever seen, someone make both of their opponents in their last 2 fights literally just break down in front of people on TV and just, cry out loud. But nevertheless, Dricus won the fight and but won both fights and defended his belt. And it isn't for these next two guys. Dricus is quietly have been one of the fighters of the year. I mean, I think that's just undeniable, given the fact that he beat two former champions, actually three straight former champs, if you include Robert Whittaker, Strickland, and Duplessis, and Izzy. Now we're down to the final two. Obviously, I think everyone knows who it's going to be between one or two. This is basically a decision of what you value, and you're probably wondering, drumroll please. Number two I have is Alex Pereira. I can make my case here. Everyone's probably heard it before, whether what side you're on. Alex Pereira definitely had a most exciting, I'd say most valuable, I think, to the company year. It was just undeniable. Heading into UFC 300, they wanted to make, McGregor versus Chandler. They couldn't do that, but then they were going through the process of Leon either fighting, Shavkat, Islam, or, Hamzat. They couldn't make that. Pereira then takes the hand, says, you know what, I'll fight Jamal. We'll move him up from 301 to 300. And then he has that, devastating main event KO. And then in 303, where once again, Conor and Chandler falls out, they need a main event to salvage a thing as significant as International Fight Week. Him and Yuri run it back, where he just dominates Yuri across the all 5 minutes and in the early, 10 seconds of the second round. And then once again at 307, where the UFC, in just a simple case, just didn't have, a good enough main event for them in Salt Lake. Pereira just raises his hand and says, yeah, I'll just fight someone. I'll fight Roundtree and KOs him again. So that was with 3 main events, 3 KOs, 3 stoppages, just 3, title defenses, just an all-around great year for Pereira. The only criticism you can make, obviously, is he has not fought Ankalaev. That's going to be, put to rest next year. But, Pereira, it definitely comes to the fact that beginning of the year, he was this fan favorite. Last year, he went from, no longer is this guy that, he's the guy that beat Adesanya. He's the guy that beat Adesanya kickboxing. Now that's Alex Pereira. That's a face of the UFC. To now where you exit this year and you're like, Alex Pereira is the most valuable fighter. He's the most fun. Everyone that's not even that big of a fan loves Alex because he has this badass walkout. He wears the cool shorts. By the way, that doesn't get enough credit. That he wore the same blue themed color shorts on it all 3 fights. I think that was something that really stood out and was almost gave himself that identity as that type of champion, that intimidating guy. And for that reason, he is well beloved and, as I mentioned before, the most valuable fighter in the UFC. Take away Alex Pereira, the UFC would have been in so many big holes. Like, if you actually look at their main events, what they were looking at for, 300 would have been more doable, but 303, they had nothing. At 307, you would have had Raquel Pennington versus Juliana Pena as your main event. Instead, you got, a fight of the year between Alex and Roundtree and a just beautiful finish on Roundtree. And I mean, just again, Alex Pereira is that dude. He's that guy that is just said, all right, I'll just put the company on my back. And, he really could have just fought he was originally supposed to fight at 301 in Brazil and then fight again at 305 and just, son Izzy and just say, I'm just going to take your city and just make my main event overshadow yours. But for that reason, he is number 2, which leaves us to number 1. Yes, number 1 is the El Matador. It is Ilia Topuria. Ilia Topuria, in my opinion, is the number 1 fighter. He's the biggest winner of 2024. Let me be clear about it. He's the biggest winner. He's not, in my opinion, yet number 1 pound for pound, but he is the biggest winner. And the reason is that entering this year, he was seen as, possibly a scary matchup for Alexander Volkanovski, having just gotten KO'd by Islam. We're seen as, okay, that's not a great person that you want to be facing after just coming off a KO. To exiting this year, he's the guy that KO'd Alexander Volkanovski at featherweight, something no one else has done at the UFC or in general. No one has ever KO'd Volkanovski. He does that in about 7 minutes. And he just was able to really, when he fought Max, he was able to say, hey, I, did something in 7 minutes that you couldn't do across 75 minutes. That's something that really could put in perspective fans. And that started off this, hate that Ilia was gaining. And Ilia in the pre-fight 298 said, all you guys booing, you'll eventually cheer for me. And that proved the case. And at 308, the fight of the year for diehard fans of the MMA, he fights Max Holloway in Abu Dhabi and becomes the first person ever to drop Max Holloway, and then to eventually KO Max Holloway, something no one has done. I know people are making the case for Alex Pereira, but he went 3-0. He went 3 knockouts. You need to understand the concept of the value of opponent that Ilya was facing this year. He was facing the two GOATs of his division in Volk and Max, and he KO'd both of them in the first 3 rounds. That is something that is, you have to take into account, and it has to be weighed more than someone that was beating Jamal, a guy who was, out for over a year. That's someone that beat Yuri, that he had beaten, just half a year earlier, and beat somebody like Roundtree, who hadn't fought the entire year. That is more valuable, in my opinion. And to conclude that, he is my biggest winner of 2024. So let me know what you guys think. Do you agree with the fighters I picked for your biggest winners? How do you feel about the list? If you don't like it, tell me down in the comments who I forgot. Just again, to remind you, this was guys that had to fight multiple times. So sorry, Islam. Sorry, Bilal. Sorry, Aspinall. If you got other theme video suggestions, please let me know. I am going to make a video of the biggest 2024 losers later this week. But with that, like, subscribe, share the video, all that jazz. Thanks for watching. I'm Casual Chris, and I'll see you guys later.